Okay, now we're going to continue. Now we're going to jump right in to Hey Amid Beis, the bottom of the last two lines, Iboilahu. Now we just went through a 6-minute chazara. We're going to jump right into Iboilahu. So we're just finishing up that there's a chazaka that a person, we're going with that Reish Lakish, that a person will never pay before its due date. The Gemara says, Iboilahu, Teva'oi la'achar zman. The due date was the first. However, the lender approaches the borrower on the 15th or the 10th, many days after the first. Mahu, what is the halacha? So what's the question? Mi amrinan b'mokem chazaka mali l'shaker. Now, we have a concept called mali l'shaker. Mali l'shaker means, if I want to lie, you come to me and ask me something, and I could have easily lied, and because with that lie, you won't be able to do with me anything. For example, you'll go over to me and say, you owe me money.
So it's the same as amigo.
This is amigo. We're talking about amigo is. Amigo, everyone knows what amigo is?
Yeah.
Right. So that's what a mali l'shaker is. So amigo is a mali l'shaker. Mali l'shaker means, if you come over to me and I could have said an easy lie, and that lie would have basically closed the argument, closed the conversation. So instead of me lying, I told you the truth. So the truth is a little, the truth, usually you need to have, let's say, witnesses. So you need to have proof. But I'm saying my biggest proof is I could have just lied and I wouldn't have had to bring proof. So let me be believed. Now the question over here is, if a person says, you come over to me after the first, and I say I paid, am I believed? Definitely. Because it's ready after the first. I'm only not believed before the first. Now, but instead of me answering that I paid on the first, you know what I answered? I paid before the first. So now we know there's a chazaka that a person doesn't pay before the first, like Reish Lakish. But he has a migu. Because his migu is he could have said I paid after the first. Because that's what we're talking about when he approached him after the first. That's the Gemara's question. Tavoi la'achar zman. Va'amalai paraticha betoich zmani. And I paid before my time. Mahu. What is the halacha? Mi amrinam b'makom chazaka min mali l'shaker. Do we say a mali l'shaker? I dilma b'makom chazaka lo amrinan mali l'shaker. Or we don't say such a concept. Pardon?
Why should I lie? What you're saying?
Yeah, but that's the point. Chazaka tells us that a person will never pay. It's so strong, that chazaka, that it overrides mali l'shaker. Mali l'shaker is somewhat of a brownie point. It's somewhat of a degree that we could give credibility to your argument, right? It gives credibility. But what happens when there's something so strong against that taina that it falls apart? That is the question of the Gemara. How powerful is that chazaka? If it's 0.001% chance that something happened, does that work against mali l'shaker, Jack?
No.
Okay, so that we agree that there's certain times that mali l'shaker is not going to override a chazaka. All right, let's continue. Let's bring rayas. Tashma. Let's bring a raya from our Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "Becheskas shenasan achi yavi raya sheloi nasan." We're on top of Vav Amud Aleph. You have it, Vav Amud Aleph, the top.
Yeah.
Tashma. Yeah. So we're bringing a raya that says, Becheskas shenasan, each name has a raya, achi yavi raya sheloi nasan. So what's that case of our Mishnah in the ratio? Hey chidami, ilema sheteva oilach zman. If we say the builder, he sued his neighbor after the zman, after the due date. Ve'amalai, and he answered perticha b'zmani. Pshita. Why would the Mishnah have to tell me that I believe? Why would I think otherwise? Ela lav da amarle. Rather, it must be the case. Is a different case. That he's saying perticha b'teich zmani. I paid before my due date. Alma filu b'malkum chazaka amrinan mali l'shaker. Right. So elamai, we have a raya that we see that a person is believed to say perticha b'derech zmani. Why? Because he has a chazaka, right? He could have easily said I paid during the time. Shani hachal, like we said, the Gemara answers no. The chal shafa v'shafa. Each and every row that he's building, every layer, zimnehu. It is his time to pay. That is the due date. There is no migu going on over there. Okay, now we're going to try to bring a raya from the Sefer. Tashma. It says, Me'arba amois ulemalo, ein mechayvin oisai. From 4 amas and upward, we said the case is 10 amas. So from 4 to 10, he's not believed. But then the Mishnah says, Samach le'kaisel acher b'chule, he's chayiv. Sorry, ein mechayvin oisai, he's not obligated to pay for the rest of the 4 amas. But Samach le'kaisel acher, then he's chayiv to pay the difference, until he brings proof otherwise. So what's the case? Hey chidami, if we're talking about it was after due date, and I said I paid on time, am I lie? Why am I not believed? He should be believed. He's claiming that he paid on time. No one argues if a person says I paid on time. We're trying to say that we're talking about a case where he's saying I paid before the due date, and then we see we have a rye that we don't say migu. On that, the Gemara answers again the same rye, the same answer we answered in Hamid Beis. Shani hacha mi yemer the mechayv l'Rabbanan, because it's not so simple that he's liable. Okay. Now we're going to try to bring a raya from a different Mishnah. Tashma. There's a Mishnah Shvuas that says as follows: a person walks over to his fellow friend and he says, "Mani li biyadcha, you owe me $100." Amalehin, and he agrees. Yeah, sure, I owe you. Yeah, we just was in the grocery store and I asked you yesterday. No problem. Remind me later. I'll pay you back. Lemachar, the following day, Amar loy tinoheli. On the next page, Tanaleli, give me. So it depends. If he says yes, I paid you in between the time I agreed with you. Then by supper, by dinner, when we came back, when you reminded me by mincha that I owed you the money, I agreed, and then I paid you by dinner. That's not a problem. Potter. However, if he suddenly changes his tune and says a whole different story, never happened. I don't know who you are. Then you're chayiv. And we're talking about, that it has to be that he's able to prove it, that he agreed. So the halacha is, you clearly see, so let's go into the raya. But I'm just bring out one point. After he changed his tune, he didn't know that the person had witnesses proving it, that he admitted to him that he owed him the money in between. So that's the case. He borrowed money. Whether he borrowed money is not relevant. However, what happened was, Reuven approached him and said, I lent you money yesterday in the grocery store. And he said, sure, I'm going to pay you later. Sure. And there was Edom that heard that. And then later he changed his tune. So the halacha is chayiv. Why? Let's go through it. My love isn't going like this. If I say, Nesativ lacha, I gave it to you, it's like I'm saying I paid you on time. However, it's like saying, it's like I'm telling you I paid before the loan was even due. And the Mishnah still says, Viktani chayiv, and you're still chayiv. So it's very clearly, you don't say a chazaka. Mar says, no, that's not a raya from the Mishnah and Shvuas. You know why? Loi, doesn't mean particha doesn't mean I paid before the day. You know what the guy's saying? Loi, I don't know who you are. Right? Then we know the Amamar when a person says, I never borrowed from you money, then we all agree that it's included in the statement that I never repaid you. If I never borrowed, I never repaid you. It's a two-way street. So it's like he's saying, I never repaid you back. That's why he's chayiv. And the Mishnah over there also said, our Mishnah also said, Samach like kaisel acher megalglin Allah v'sakol. However, if you, right now Mishnah, when you put on the parallel wall, you chayiv for the rest. So there's a question about how much are you going to be chayiv. Amar Rav Huna samach lepalgo samach lekula. So we're going to take out the perish chai in order to get a very clear understanding of what's going on with this wall. Here we go. Samach lepalgo, samach lekula could either mean two options. Do we all see the first kaisel? This is going to be the first kaisel. Do we see how it's beautiful? It's 10 by 10, we're going to call it for practical matters. It's 10 feet wide, 10 feet high. He went and built 5 feet. Okay? Now, did he build 10 feet by 5 vertically or 10 by 5 horizontally? So samach lekula, samach lepalga. Right? Rashi says, Shaloi haya kaisel chadash, either aruch means the whole entire length of the wall. It was only 5 amas wide. Or no, he did it along the whole length, but he only did 4 amas, he jumped 1 amma. That's what it means, samach lekula, samach lepalga. So let's jump into it. Now when he says yechayiv and everything, Rav Huna wants to say, samach lepalga, samach lekula. Even though, like we just saw in the picture, he didn't extend the wall completely. However, he's still chayiv to pay the extra, yes, everything. Chayiv litin keilu samach zok Rashi koisel sheni keneged kolarishan. And Rashi explains, the kivan, the hischel, seifel likma. Rashi's coming from a point that once you start building, you're already showing me you're going to continue building. And we're going to see in a moment that if you build in certain situations where it's clearly that you're not going to go do any more work, we're going to get into that. But when as soon as you start work, you're already chayiv and everything. Rav Nachman, no. Lemai de samach samach. Whatever you built, you're chayiv. Ulemai de samach loy samach. You can't be a chayiv him and the rest because he had nothing to indicate that he's going to continue. However, umay de Rav Huna bekarna velufta. Rav Huna's maide, we're going to show you this illustration. There, Rav Huna's maide that you're not chayiv the rest because everyone could tell. You see this corner? No one's arguing that he's planning to continue to build. It's very clearly that he's making himself a little small shed. Something going on in the corner. So no one's going to argue that he's going to build there for his patu. Maider Rav Nachman goes the other way. Ba'afriza uvekavato decheshuri. Rav Nachman will concede that in the cases of afriza, which is a very thick beam, that you go along the whole entire wall. When he puts up, do we see this is the afriza, which is, I would call it the foundation beam, on top of his wall, and then he starts putting on, right, this is the afriza, the long beam, and then he starts putting on ukavata shura, means the setting for the cross beams. This is the cross beam. So it's very clear, there's a clear indication that he's planning on using a second story. He's making like a porch, right? He's making a nice thick beam, and then he's planning on doing something on top. So Rav Nachman's going to agree that you chai for the rest.
Can the fellow tell him you can't? I don't want your beams on my wall.
Oh, that's what he has to pay. We're going to see about the beams on the wall. He's damaging the wall.
Because he's using the.
So he's paying for the wall. He's paying for that, for the amount of work he has to put in.
I don't want your money. I don't want you to use my wall.
I don't know if he has it right, because we have to remember the wall is a shared wall up to 4 amas, so therefore it's on my property line. You're right, if he went and built it in his own property line, it'll be a whole separate discussion. What's happening here is, it was a shared wall to a certain degree up to 4 amas. After 4 amas, maybe not. That's the problem. But he's definitely doing it. We're gonna, we could say, well, let's see, he's doing it on the 4 amas even, in his own shared wall. So to bring out one point, Rav Nachman and Rav Huna are not having a disagreement if there's clear indications if he's going to continue the wall or not continue the wall. The question is, when he starts, is there indication? Amar Rav Huna says a very related ruling. Bei Kavi. In this scenario, Shimon extended the height of the wall, that he's continuing higher, and potentially he wants to put beams into the wall. Let's see if they have an illustration. I'm not sure if they do. Bei Kavi, lo have a chazaka. I don't see a... Hell yeah, I do see actually. The next case. Not sure if this is the case. Let's see.
Well, we could have putting beams into the wall to strengthen the wall.
It's a stronger beam when it's in the wall. It's much stronger.
So in other words, it is to strengthen it.
It is no, he has two options. Either in Rav Nachman's case is he did it on top, he put a thick beam, then a cross beams, or he made holes in his own wall. He didn't touch that person's wall. This wall belongs to them. You see how he did it clearly before the 4 amas are up? Mm-hmm. So he put it in between He put his own wall, put a little stuff. However, what happens, there's no illustration, but basically what he did was, he put windows in his own wall. The halach is, Loi have chazaka. Why? The afagav the overlay himliti, even though the builder made castings for the beams, Loi have chazaka. The overlay himliti, why not? The amalei, if the builder can tell his neighbor, I said to myself, lechifayasli, if at some future date when you're going to build a parallel wall, then I'm going to let you attach it. Loi lisra ashisai, which means to say is, I'm going to build holes in order to put in beams on a future date, because lo yitzur, you want to put beams in a future date, you can end up damaging my whole entire wall. So I'm fine with building now for the future, that if you want to continue building the wall, then you'll be chai. So this is the case. They do bring the case of Beikavi loy have chazaka. This is the scenario. You see how there's four? And he built little windows. It's not a chazaka. Do you see this?
Yeah.
So this is not considered a chazaka. Even if you build himliti, which is like a little, I would say it's caskets. It's, what do they call it? Casings. Okay. Now, the Gemara is going to discuss the concepts of chazaka. So, we're not handling cheskes abatim, which we're going to start seeing later on in Lameches, Lametes. Cheskes abatim, where it talks about a person living in a field or a house for 3 years, that he gets automatically the rights to say that he bought it. Over here, we're talking about a chazaka, that he bought a usage. That means to say is, for example, you have a shortcut in your backyard. Eventually, you could come to a point where I could say, I paid you to use your backyard for a shortcut. However, there's a Mishnah on later on in Perek Cheskes Abatim, in Beis Memalef over there, it says that kol chazaka she'eni minatayna ein chazaka. That means to say is, as long as you have to have a valid argument and say, I paid money for that privilege. However, if you're just saying, oh, he wasn't meiche, that's not a chazaka. It's not a taina. So now we're going to go into certain scenarios where the person says, I paid for this right. And the question is he believed? Omer Rav Nachman, achzik lehordi loy hachzik lechashuri. So what is hordi? What is kashuri? Very, very clear illustration over here. Kashuri is very thick beams. It's heavier beams. They weigh much more on the wall, and they could affect the weight, and they'll affect the whole entire wall. Hordi is like very thin beams. So what happens, it's a machlekes in the Gemara, if I agree that you paid me for what? For the thin beams. The halacha is, Rav Nachman wants to say, you don't have a right for thicker beams, it's going to damage my wall. Lechashuri, however, if you paid for the usage of the rights of the thick beams, achzik lahordi, then you automatically have a right for the thin beams. Makes sense. It's a kol shekein almost. But Rav Yosef, he says otherwise. Amahachzik lahordi, achzik lechashuri. He says that once you paid for the right to put objects on top of the wall, you have no right to start coming back with a measuring stick and a scale and weights and start saying, I only agreed to 12.4 pounds, not 4. No such a thing. I paid you clearly for the rights to put stuff on my wall. Ikanami, it wasn't Rav Yosef, it was Rav Nachman that said, Rav Nachman, achzik lahordi, achzik l'chshuri, achzik lahordi, which means that you have a right for everything. Okay. Now we're going to go into a related case where you have the rights where a person has a courtyard next door to his, let's say, shed. He has a little roof, a little enclosure, and there's rainwater that drifts down into the yard. And he has to pay him for that right because he's damaging the yard to a certain degree. So we're going to look in the illustration, then we're going to go through the Gemara. There's 3 options. There's something called natfi. Natfi means there's no gutters. It's just a regular square roof. And water, if we all see.
Flat roof.
Flat roof, yeah, but the water goes everywhere. Option A. Option B is going to be, today what we have, a gutter. All the water goes down to a specific place and goes down a gutter. Option 3 is the worst option, where the person has, not a flat roof, and he put on top of the roof materials like leaves, we're going to see what it is, that the water is very heavy, because the leaves grab all the water, and then it pushes out all the water. Wow. It's called Srifa Dorni. Look how thick those droplets are. This is the third, makes it the worse. This in a way is good, even though it's a lot of water, but it's only one specific location. And this is a very low pressure water all around the property. So let's go through these three scenarios. Amar of Nachman, achzik lenatfi. If he established the right lenatfi, means the illustration one, where it's a flat roof and water going everywhere. Achzik is automatically established l'shavchi, for the gutter. But achzik l'shavchi loy, achzik lenatfi. Even though, why? Because I gave you a specific 6 inches in the corner of my yard. By you doing natfi, you're going to ruin my whole entire yard. However, Rabbi Yosef argues, he established the rights because it's irrelevant how the runoff is going to be, how that runoff is going to happen. However, Ikadamri Amar of Nachman, Nachman does say that he has the right for everything. However, he agrees which is the willow branches, which makes the water much thicker. There, the damage will be much more effective.
Heavier.
It's heavier. It's concentrated water. Rav Yosef argues and says, and Taka, indeed, there was a Maisa that Ovid Rav Yosef Ovda B'Tzrifa D'Orvdani gave the person, he was in ruling of the person who owned the shack, that he was able to put on those willow branches and made the water much thicker. Now, we're going to jump into halachas of Rav Nachman that talks about acquiring rights. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua. We're going to be flipping to Vav Amid Beis. Hamasker Bayis L'Chaveiroi, if one rents an apartment to his fellow friend. So Bibira Gedaila, in a very large residence. Let's make this a little, to have very clearly, I would call it a motel style house. If you look at motels, look at the motels. So let's give a little explanation what's going on in those days. Those days, you see how there's a bunch of little apartments, very motel style. However, few important points. Those days, the main entrance to the building, we'll call it the motel, there was a beautiful 2 gardens. Even today, when you go into a lot of people, they have nice 2 patches of gardens, and it's beautiful. Another thing is, they all had a little, in Eretz Yisrael you can find that a lot, a little door opening, and they would put little tchotchkes, they would use it as a little storage. Every apartment had in front of them, I would say a little locker, but not a real locker that closes. And they all had, they all had a hook or something to put on utensils on it. So do we see the utensils on the hook on top of Gimel? We see the lockers, those are lockers in the garden. There's 3 points over there. So let's go through it. The halacha is, if someone rented an apartment in this type of bira gdaila, motel-style residence, mishtamesh bizizeha uvikaslead arba amis. The tenant may use the beams that we spoke about, and the little crevices, those little holes that you put like a little locker, up to dalad amis. It has to be within dalad amis of his own little apartment. Ubai v'akaisel, and you can also use the thickness of the top of the house to put stuff on it. B'makim shenahagu, aval beturbitz aptani loy. It's only in a place where that was the minig to put it on the objects. Aval beturbitz aptani loy, which what we spoke about, that little beautiful garden at the main entrance, that they had no right to use any part of it, like that they should not destroy.
You need good lawyers over there to make it clear where you're allowed.
So those days, the lawyers wasn't simple. You had to go to Bezdin, you had to pay for Ayurch Din.
Right, okay, it's a bit of a makam over there, right.
Correct. Okay. Minagamalkim, those days it wasn't simple just hiring a lawyer. Okay, Reb Nachman didei amar filu beturbitz aptini, it's still mutter. You're allowed to use that section because you could enter this, so it's part of your chutzner. Aval rechava shacharei abatim loy, it's not part of the rental, the backyard. Rava amar filu rechava shacharei abatim, that is included in the rental. Again, you could always stipulate whatever you want. You can make a contract with a person and say, I want to use everything, whatever. That's we're not talking about with this contracts. We're talking about where there was no specific agreement. That's why we have the Gemara to Paskin. Pardon?
That's the problem.
That's the problem, correct. Okay. What is the halacha? Amar Ravina, now we're going to question certain situations. Hi, kishura de metaltala. A person put a beam, built the shade, and he put it on his neighbor's wall. The question is going to be if he got the schusim, if he paid for it. Again, he's talking about where he says he paid for it. So do we see over here he's putting thick beams? He's using thick beams, and then he's going to use a sheet as shade. Pass it over. You can go look through it. Okay? So the halacha is ad plus in yaimin up to 30 days. Loy have a chazaka. Basra plus in yaimin have a chazaka. Which means to say is he's believed to say that he acquired the rights after 30 days, because he could say, you know what, I wasn't going to make a big stink before 30 days. I thought you would have, you needed it for a few days. I wasn't going to force you to do anything. The sukkah the mitzvah he, however, let's say he built a sukkah. Ad shivayaymin loy have a chazaka. Basra shivayaymin have a chazaka. By sukkah 7 days, it's really 8 days, especially in our days, right, with Simchas Torah. But till Sukkot, let's go till the Yom Tov Sukkot passes, you have a chazaka. Now, why don't you have 30 days? We just said a second ago, you had 30 days by the shade. The difference is when a person built a chazaka, he built it for an entire year, especially if you go through the Mishnah Sukkah. You see, that was the derech a lot of times. They would remove it a little and then fix it up on before Sukkot, 30 days before. But they used it for an entire year. That's why it's different than the previous case, which was only a temporary structure. However, the chabre b'ten, in all these scenarios, the second he added cement, whoa, then the person realizes the guy's serious and is planning to use him for real.
Permanent.
It's permanent, right? La'alta have a chazaka, immediately as a chazaka, you don't have to wait any time, because a regular owner would never agree for you to put on cement without paying. Okay, now we're going to talk about rooftops. I think we're more or less till the end of the Amud, we're going to be talking about rooftops where you have chutzers, elevation levels. Let's go through it. Amar Abaya. Shnei batim mishnei tzidei rishus harabim. You have two houses standing on two opposite sides of a rishus harabim. The halacha is zeh oisem makel lechetzi gagoy v'zeh oisem makel lechetzi gagoy. Now we should all look at the illustration on 6b2. It's note 20. There's a diagram. Does everyone see on the left side of the page a diagram? You see how there's a rishus harabim. There's a rooftop on the right side and a rooftop on the left side. Do we see the wall? How now, no one person built the wall completely, let's say it was 30 amos length. They all built the wall, only half of it.
What does it serve?
It serves, so zeh shaloi keneged zeh. Ma'adif. Ma'adif means, so let's explain it. Basically, it doesn't make sense for both of them to build a complete fence. That's a real waste of money. Doesn't make sense for one person to build a fence. Not fair. You should build a fence. Oh, I should build a fence. So we figure let's find middle ground. The middle ground is, if you look at the diagram, you're going to build the right side, I'm going to build the left side, but we're going to continue that they overlap each other. Now there is a machlokes in the paiskim. Does it really overlap each other and it completely solves the problem? Or listen, we do it as much as possible, even though it's not going to be sufficient completely, it's the best option on the table. But to answer your question, what does it accomplish? It does accomplish that for the majority of the views, you're not going to see each other's neighbors because your wall and his wall are overlapping to a certain degree that you don't see in between each other's fields, on each other's rooftops. So the question is, if you look at the diagram, there's a rishus harabim in between. So frak the Gemara and Abaya, why do you have to tell me there's a rishus harabim? My area rishus harabim. Afilu. Rishus Yachin. Even if it was Rishus Yachin, you should have to put a fence to ensure privacy. Right. For the Gemara, you're right. But Rishus Harabim mitzrichle mao the tema nemelei. I would have otherwise said that one person can tell the other. Saif. Ha boys, let's denui mibnei Rishus Harabim. You either way have a whole Rishus Harabim. What do you want from me? You either way have to hide. Kamash and the Amalei. No. Rabim. Now, just to bring out one simple point, that Yamama and Laila doesn't mean pure dark and day and night, but it means that hours, those days, there were certain hours where it was very busy. Even though it's light outside, Laila means, evening hours. You still can use a rooftop. We're not talking about pitch black. That's obvious to say. You're on the roof all the times. Therefore, we need to put up a privacy. Inami, Rabim Kika Mina Chazali. They could only see when I'm standing. Think about it. If I'm on a rooftop and I'm not sitting on the rooftop, I can't see a person sitting. It needs to be high up. You can see me whether I'm sitting because we're both equal ground. Another point is Rabim Kimayinu Chazili. They have to look up on the roof. By default, they're looking straight. They're not looking up. So therefore, it's not an issue. If they don't make a conscious effort, they don't see me. You could always see me just by spacing out. You automatically hit my rooftop. Okay, we're going to continue to analyze Abaya. Amar Mar, that's what we explain. Frek the Gemara. Pshita, what is Abaya saying? It's quite obvious that they should build a fence. That they have to build, each have to build a half. We're talking about one went originally, built a half a fence, and then he schleps his other friend, says, go build the other half. So Mao, the person that did not start building the fence, Getalim, Shekol, Uzniko, the Avdi Atkule. No problem. I'll pay for the other half. But you're already doing construction, and you could ask anybody in construction, once you start construction, you're already paying a lot of money. It's much more expensive to do two small projects than one larger project. So I'm basically telling him that finish up the project, I'll pay the difference, and the should be a good time. No, the owner that started the roof could say, at my time, you know why you're not building? Mishum the mitara ashisach, you're damaging the roof to a certain degree by the weight of the fence. No, not me, Mr. Leashisai. I also don't want to build an entire fence on the roof to destroy to damage my roof. Okay. Amar, we're going to continue a little more. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Rav Nachman said in the name of Shmuel. Gag hasamuch lechatzar chaveiroi. One owns the roof, and it's overlooking his neighbor's courtyard. The halacha is, he has to make a makkah for amas. Okay.
Don't you have to do that on a flat roof anyway?
You have to make it on a flat roof. Dalad amas is when the chutz, we saw that. Yeah, we saw that we have to make a what? Dalad amas. That was the raya from Bezim and Beis. The Gemara says, right? The Gemara says that you have to make a mak, and he answers the Baal HaChatz could tell the Baal HaGag that I don't know when you're up there. Here we're talking about. You're right. That point is that is the raya. We said that raya Bezim and Beis from where? Rav Nachman. Where's Rav Nachman? Where's the makar? This is the makar. Remember we saw in Bezim and Beis a raya that has a kriya. That was the sixth raya. We brought 6 rayas.
This is where the halacha comes from?
Yeah, you have to build a makkah of 10 tefachim.
No, not 10 tefachim.
Dalad amas, Bezim and Beis.
You have a flat roof.
Yes.
You have to build a
Dalad amas. That was the 6th raya in Bezim and Beis. Correct. That was the 6th raya in Bezim and Beis. Where's that raya from? Velvim and Beis. Our Gemara. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Gag hasamuch lechatzar chaveiroi oiselei ma'ake gavoya arba amas. This is the Rav Nachman. I've been Gag ugag loy. However, it's only if there's a roof and a chatzah, but 2 roofs not. And the reason is, right, we saw already then, the Gemara already explained that it's not a problem because there the Baal Chatzah had a real taina, here they don't have a taina. However, I'm thinking now, l'char it's a raya that has a kriya lo shmehezek, because if it has a kriya shmehezek, even ben gag l'gag you should have to. Okay. However, Rav Nachman didei Amar einoi zakuk la'arba amas aval zakuk l'mechitzas hasar. Interesting. Rav Nachman says you don't need dalad amas in this scenario. You only need 10 tefachim. So the Gemara is going to question this. Why do I need 10 tefachim? Limai. Ila has a kriya doesn't help. Arba amas bina. Like we all know which more you need dalad amas. Ila nit basalav keganev. If basically what we're worried is, right, even though you have 2 parallel roofs, what are we worried about? That maybe what's going to happen is he's going to drop. Let's go look at this case. Make it easier. Do we see how this is Gag of Ruvain? This is Gag of Shimon. This is not a chotzer. They're on rooftops. You have to put, Rav Nachman says, you put a little 10 tefachim high, a boundary markers. 10 tefachim, little sticks. The question, what does it help for? If it helps, if it has a kriya, we know you need dalad amas. If it's for Ganef, you don't need 10 tvachim. All you need is boundary markers. Oh, if you're going to tell me it's for the little animals not to go through, to go onto your property line. So make it. You don't have to make it so high, 10 tvachim. Make it 4 tvachim, 5 tvachim, whatever the measurement will be. It suffice. Or 3 tvachim, I think it is, the Rashi and Sukkah says. Okay. So Mar answers no. So you're going to tell me all I need is boundary markers. Why 10 tvachim high? If it's only 10 tvachim, it's not such a big deal. If it's less than tvachim, it's only gimel tvachim, what's going to happen is he's going to be able to say, oh, you know what? I didn't realize I just jumped right over because I needed my object. No one's going to argue if you have to climb a fence to go into someone's property, it's highly suspicious. Why are you climbing a fence? Go knock on my door and knock. You don't jump fences. However, if there's only a little marker, would I go into my neighbor's property to get my ball back? My kids were playing ball, it fell into my neighbor's property. To jump a whole fence is highly suspicious. You knock on your neighbor's door. If it's only boundary markers, he's going to go right through. Okay, Meisvei. If one's courtyard was higher than the roof of his neighbor, right? The owner is not bound to the owner of the rooftop. Because, like we saw, the Gemara already explained earlier, that you're not there on a regular basis. My love ain't is kakin like klal. He doesn't have to build that even a partition 10 tvachim high. So you clearly see that we're not worried of mimisepes baal. We're not worried about trespassing. Mara says no. Light in is kakin la ba'amas. I'm in kakin mechitza sasara. You are chayiv to build a 10 tvachim high wall. Let's continue one last part of the Gemara, and we're gonna stop at the Gemara ban and Amid. Itmar, shtei chatzeres. You have 2 chatzeres. Zu l'malam zu, but one is higher than the other one. So the ground level was higher than the other one. Now, the halacha is, even though it's really the person who could see better is the guy on top. He sees the whole entire view. The halacha is, Amr of the bottom person still has to contribute to the wall. Tachtoin boine mikenegdoi va'ila. The owner of the wall has to build up to where his yard ends. So to go through this is the guy. This is Chatzar Elyon. This is Chatzar Tachton. Right? He's much lower. But the Tachton still needs to build till the property line of the Elyon. Mara says, "Ve'Elyon b'ayne mekneged b'ayla." Chizda Amar, no, Elyon misayeya milamatu b'ayne. He has to pay also the bottom. He has to pay for half of the bottom. Then a vada, in this scenario where the chatzar tachton is on a very large slant, that there's certain areas of his chatzar where you do have parallel view, then there's no question that you must also pay for your half completely, and I don't have to contribute. Okay, we're going to stop over here for today.